Welcome back, listeners, to another interesting episode on the BizBlend podcast, where business insights meet personal breakthroughs. I'm your host, Sana, and listeners, today's episode is all about something which most entrepreneurs whisper about, but rarely unpack fully: business performance and what exactly goes behind all that math. Now, listeners, my guest today is someone who doesn't sugarcoat the numbers. Meet Mike Milan. He is also known as Cashflow Mike and is the author of Don't Tell Me What to Do, which is a no nonsense guide to the math behind business finances. Now, with 14 companies under his belt and over $150 million in hidden cash uncovered, Mike has trained more than 25,000 entrepreneurs, bankers, and accountants to understand one powerful truth: when you truly know your numbers, you can lead with confidence. So, listeners, today we are diving into the psychology of money, the mental burden of financial uncertainty, and how business owners can create clarity instead of chaos. So, let's quickly get into it. Mike, welcome to the show, and I'm really, really honored to have you here with us.
Hey, live from Texas, it's Cashflow Mike, right? So I really like how you said it's a whisper, right? It's something that we whisper about. Man, that really resonated with me. Great job on the intro.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you, Mike. So, let's go. So, Mike, you often say that knowing your numbers is the antidote to anxiety in business. This is so relevant, when especially we are trying to convey something in the boardroom, in the meetings, that we want to prove something. We have to have our data with us. So, in your experience, Mike, how directly do financial blind spots impact an entrepreneur's mental health or, well-being, overall well-being?
Yeah, so that's super interesting. So when you call it a blind spot, most people look at their financial statements, and I'm talking about entrepreneurs, at least the ones that I've worked with in the past, and they don't know exactly what to do with them, right? I mean, some people say, well, I just look at the bank statement. And I'll tell you something about the bank statement. It's only going to tell you if you have a good or bad day. Do I have money or not? that's what you use the bank statement for. Yeah, other entrepreneurs will rely pretty heavily on the income statement, right, or the profit and loss statement, which is really just going to tell you if your business model works and if you had a good or bad month or quarter or year, and then it starts over. But hardly anybody knows how it gets to start over. Like, oh man, January was terrible. Don't worry about it. We'll get them in February. Right? So, uh, and the reason that it starts over is that you take the profit or loss from the bottom of the income statement at the end of the month and you move it onto the balance sheet in the form of retained earnings. Now, the balance sheet is where things get tricky, right? The balance sheet is where most people will look at it and says, I know that that number assets is supposed to equal the bottom number, liabilities and equity. So when they match, they think, oh, I'm doing a good job. But what the balance sheet really is, it's the culmination of every single decision you've ever made in your business. It is the living history, and anybody that knows how to read it knows where the money came from, what you did with it, what you own, what you owe, who owns you, those type of things. So, the balance sheet is kind of the most important one because everything flows into it. The last statement, if and I know I'm being a little wordy here, but the last statement is a cash flow statement. And I'll tell you some yeah, tell you something about the cash flow statement. It's the most confusing one because it's math that goes in the opposite direction, right? First of all, it's the tattletale of the business. It tells everybody where the money came from and what you did with it. But when I say the math is in the opposite direction, on the income statement, it's vertical math. I start with sales and I just subtract things out until I got the profit. Everybody can do that. On the balance sheet, it's vertical math. If I put money in the bank account, the value goes up. If I take money out, the value goes down, right? Vertical math, pretty easy, plus and minus. But on the cash flow statement, it's horizontal math, right? There's no transactions that just add up. It is the total of what it was last period against the total of what it is this period, the change between the two. So it's horizontal math. That's where people get a little confused. So those are the statements that create the blind spots, and I try to make it really simple to understand what you're looking at in any of those statements.
I really like this concept of horizontal and the vertical one. Because it kind of gives you a visual explanation about the behind those P&L numbers and the balance sheets, and otherwise P&L can be really like a horror movie for all of us entrepreneurs. So because there's almost a fear of what we will find from that, and that fear is obvious. That fear is obvious. So Mike, you mentioned about the cash flow, and we often hear this in the business circles, in the discussions, that cash is king, but then you also say clarity is queen. So why do you think uncertainty around cash flow triggers so much mental chaos for entrepreneurs?
Well, mainly because it's one of those things that doesn't stand out to you as much, right? I mean, when people set up their business initially, it's pretty easy for them. If I sell something for $100 and it cost me $50, well, then I make $50, right? Or at least the gross profit part. That's pretty easy to understand. The thing that's missing out of that is the timing of when did the money actually come in. There's a lot of entrepreneurs that are out there that'll go, man, I'm making money on paper. It says I'm making money. I have to pay tax on the money that's on the paper. How come I don't have any? Right? Why is there none in the bank account? And that's the timing issue. Like, especially if you sell on credit where there's accounts receivable, or if you have inventory where you have to pay for your inventory up front and then you have to wait to collect on it after you sell it. The timing issue is the most ignored of all of them, right? Of when the money actually hits your bank account, because we rely on the income statement, which ignores the timing.
That is valid. That is valid, because sometimes it can be really tricky to understand the unit economics of your business, whether it's a product or service based. And from my experience also, I think not knowing is worse than knowing things that aren't great. So, uh, Mike, before I further dive deep into all this, psychology of money and numbers, I would love to explore your journey also. I mean, how exactly did you get into this, world of understanding the numbers, the psychology, the money, and everything?
Man, that's a great story. So, most people that have known or heard me speak know that my first job out of college, and I do have an MBA from Baylor University. But my first job out of college, I was a state trooper, right? So I was a police officer, right? So you're like, a police officer? How come I'm not listening to a police officer talk about math? Okay. But back in the 1900s, so we had our 3rd daughter, right? So in my family, we had our 3rd daughter, and, I like to tell people that my family literally outgrew my income, right? Meaning I had more people to support and not enough money to do it with a state trooper salary, so, I started a little janitorial business, right? So I started a janitorial business, and, that provided me with enough confidence to just kinda make it into a full-time thing. And with that, it morphed, it changed. I changed the business model from janitorial to staffing, where I was providing hotels with people, right? They would clean rooms, they would do dishes, they would do landscaping, they would do anything that we call heart of the house, right? Not front of the house, like at the front desk, but heart of the house is what makes it all work, right? So, I don't know how I stumbled into it. I had a friend that was a general manager at a hotel, and he says, "Hey, listen, if you can figure this out, hotels will hire you all across town." So, and they did. And matter of fact, I became a preferred vendor of Marriott in St. Louis, Missouri. And it was like a bunch of Marriotts just started to hire me because we could provide people on a regular basis. Well, that thing grew, and there's a phenomenon called growing broke, right? Meaning you can actually be so successful that you run out of money. It's you're like, "Oh, what?" You're like going, "What? How does that work?" Well, it works simply like this. I opened 27 offices in 9 states in 3 years, right? We had a few hundred people working every day. And with that, what happens is that I'm making payroll for these employees every 2 weeks, but I'm waiting sometimes 3 months for a hotel to pay me. Think about that. I got to come out of my pocket three, four, five, six times to the employee before I get the first dollar from the first invoice. So you learn real fast what cash flow is, right? So I was making all kinds of money on paper. I was paying the tax on it. I just didn't have any. And that put a ton of stress on my relationships. I took a second mortgage out on the house, depleted my savings, anything I could do to make sure the employees were paid. That's what we did. Well, when you're in that situation, you really pay attention to how things work. And I became friends with a banker who taught me the concept of the financial gap. And the financial gap is the difference between money in and money out. And the larger that gap is, the more money it takes to stay or keep your business open. So I learned how to control the levers of that financial gap to make it smaller. So just think about it in your mind. If you're walking down the sidewalk, would you like to jump over a large gap or a small gap? Right. So it's easier to do a small gap. So you want your financial gap to be small. And I teach people how to manage that gap.
Wow. Okay, wow. Yeah, you have come a long way, Mike. I must say, come a long ahead. And well, um, yeah. Although, I mean, you kind of cruised through the entire journey, with fun, light, fun, uh, tone, but I could really sense the struggles, and then I also must appreciate that how much keen you have been on learning from other people, because sometimes we kind of close our mind gates, and we just cannot be open to learn, to admit our mistakes, to be accountable to ourselves, and then learn also from them. So that's a really, really important lesson I'm going to take away from your journey, Mike. So thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah, when we said cruise through, it went, ooh, I'm like a 25-year overnight success. And it was bumpy, but what I like what you said there was about, you asking for help. We close our mind gates, right? So it's like going, what I try to do now is tell people, "Hey, you're not alone, right? These problems are solvable. It may feel like it's the weight of the world, but man, ask the question. There are people out there that love to help, and not always paid, right? There's a lot of just free resources out there. Matter of fact, I've got one on my website that people can go to just to learn a little bit about the financial statements we talked about.
Wow, wow, great. We'll come to that in the conclusion of the conversation. But before that, Mike, also 25,000 professionals you have trained. Any common patterns which you have seen, and how our early beliefs about money, they can be from our childhood or from our family, or it's a kind of a generational thing. How do they affect, in the way we run our business? I mean, do you have seen any patterns like that? These.
So what I've kind of learned is that it isn't just about money. It's a lot of different things in our lives where we have set points, right? They're just set points that we're where we are the most comfortable operating. And let me give you an example. I don't know if you've ever been on a diet or tried to lose weight, right? So,
Yeah.
but yeah, and what happens? You go on the diet, you lose some weight, you're looking good, and then all of a sudden, a few months later, you're back up to the same weight that you were at, right? How does that happen, right? So we put all this work and effort in to get down to a certain weight, and then we go right back to our comfortable habits, which makes us put the weight back on. Well, that same thing happens in your checking account. If you look at most people, they have about the same amount of money in their checking account all the time, right? If it's $2,000, if it's $10,000, whatever that is, when they get below that, they get a little scared, they get a little uncomfortable. When they're above it, they're also a little uncomfortable, like going, "Oh, I got all this money. Maybe I can do something. Maybe I'm going to trip." And they try to spend it as fast as they can, it seems like, to get back to that one number that they're really comfortable with. So those are called, set points from my point of view, which is the place where we're most comfortable. And what I try to do is force people to reset, which means I have them imagine, what would it be like if you got $100,000 today, right? It just fell in your lap somehow, inheritance, whatever. What would you do? And most people will go, "Oh, I would pay off debt. I would go on this trip. I would buy that TV. I would do," and they got a whole bunch of things to do. And what they're really telling you is, I would not feel comfortable seeing $100,000 in my bank account, so I would spend it as fast as possible.
Yeah.
That's really what they're telling you. I'm like, "Hey, well, what if maybe you did a few things so you could, feel more comfortable with the number, but instead of seeing 10,000 in your bank account every month, maybe we move that to 15 and then 18, then 20, and then you build that transitional wealth where you're resetting what you feel comfortable seeing in your bank account to a point where now it feels uncomfortable when it's lower than the higher number. So that's what I'm trying to do is get people to look at it and feel just as uncomfortable when they move up the wealth spectrum. I hope that didn't sound too unclear.
No, no, that is clear. That is clear. And this is about mindset. I mean, and that's where we can see the difference in there. I mean, two people have $100, but I guess it's all about mindset, and then that mindset kind of getting built from different sort of experiences, depending on whether it's scarcity or it's guilt or it's fear or anxiety, and they don't just show up in our personal lives. They show up in the way we spend money, we do our businesses, we earn money, whether it's an entrepreneur or just a professional. So I absolutely agree with you, what you said.
Yeah, and we take our personal habits into the business with us, right? So if we have poor money management in our personal life, well, it's going to carry over to your business life and vice versa.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so Mike, let's talk about your book. I mean, the title is wow, don't tell me what to do. Yeah, of course. And that speaks to the tension between autonomy and guidance. There's that thin line. Okay, you can guide me, but you don't tell me what to do. So, how do emotions like pride or shame cloud good financial judgment, Mike? How did you come up with this title?
Yeah, so this is my 3rd book, and it came about all right, so my first book was called Don't Be a Dumb Business Owner,
Oh, wow. Okay.
right? Eh yeah, and dumb doesn't mean unintelligent, it means I don't understand my business, right? D-U-M-B, don't understand my business, and it was just about teaching people some simple math concepts to manage cash, right? That's what it was. And from there, I took a portion of that book and wrote another book called The 7 Minute Conversation, which was how to analyze financial statements in 7 minutes or less. Well, while I was teaching bankers, accountants, and business owners these techniques, they would role play, right? We would end up in a role play, like on, hey, can we have like a conversation with a client so I can kind of see how I would use this technique with a client? And after about 3 or 4 months of role playing just in live coaching situations, a couple of the accountants came to me and says, "We need to know what you do." And I'm like going, "What do you mean?" They go, "The way you talk to people is different. The way you ask the questions is different." And so I had to figure out what that was. I'm like, "Go, what am I doing different than everyone else?" And so I went back into my own history and I said, "Oh, I learned how to talk to people as a police officer." Right? I mean, think about it, right? So they teach you a skill called verbal judo, and verbal judo is about, de escalating and getting people to commit to take an action, not be compliant, right? No, don't just do it because told you to, but do it because it's the right thing to do and you're making a good choice on your own, right? So it started there, and then, because this was post-COVID, this was in the last year that I wrote this book.
Mhm.
In During COVID, I don't know if you're like me or not, but, I watched way too much TV. So, it yeah, right? Just way too much I did anyway, so, but I watched this show called Hoarders. I don't know if you've seen the show Hoarders or heard of it, but it's people with the hoarding disorder where they just accumulate too much stuff in their house and it becomes dangerous, a dangerous situation.
Yeah.
So I sat down and watched one and I was hooked. And not because of the disorder, I was hooked because of the conversation between the psychologist and the person with the hoarding disorder. And I didn't see that relationship as much as I saw business advisor and small business owner, right? So that's the way I looked at it. Like, oh man, if I just talk to people the way the psychologist does, I could get them to take action easier. And so what I noticed is that every time the family member got involved, they would tell the person with the disorder what to do. Mom, you have to do this. This house is killing you. And instantly, the mom, the person with the hoarding disorder, would go, no, it's not. And they would argue. And I'm like, oh my God, we all do that. Like our initial reaction is to resist when people tell us what to do and it's not our idea and we didn't think about it. We didn't, come up with any choices. So that's where I started to go, oh, that's where I learned all of this is I have to put people in a position where they not only say the problem out loud, and here's why that's important, Sana, is that if you say your problem out loud into the world, into the universe, then you own it, right? You know that it's a problem and nobody can argue with you, right? If I tell you what your problem is, like I can see the financial statements, I can see what the problems are. If I tell you what it is, then you can argue with me. So this whole notion was to get the client to see the problem because if they saw it, there was no one to argue with about it, and they were more willing to take action to correct it because now it's part of their idea. Does that make sense?
It takes me back to all those, episodes I watched of hostage negotiations and stuff, where they're using negotiation tactics.
Yeah,
So,
exactly right, right? And you know what they do there is they do this technique called mirroring,
yeah.
right? Which means, yeah, whatever the hostage taker says, they're gonna kinda mirror it back to them, right? And make them just see and keep them on the phone a little bit longer.
Yeah. Wow. That's really cool, Mike. Really cool. It's so simple, yet, it's not very obvious in our daily lives. But when we think about it and with clarity, it becomes like an epiphany to us. Great.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, yeah. You were saying something, Mike. Go on.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So I came up with 8 techniques, right? And I call it the 8 elevation sequence. And this sequence is a way to get somebody to see their own problem. So, and the 8 techniques are, and once I find the problem, I have solutions for those type of problems because most business problems can fit into one of 6 buckets, right? So what I'm trying to do is figure out which bucket your problem, your burning issue is in. It could be operations, it could be education, it could be debt, cash flow, profit, or the future, right? Those are the 6 buckets. And so when I ask a question like, "Hey, what's going on in your world? It's been a month or 2 since we last talked. What's been happening?" Really what I'm doing is this technique called clear the noise. And what clear the noise is that everybody that comes to a meeting already has something else on their mind, right? They have something they want to talk about. They have a question about what's happening there. They got another issue that's outside of the meeting that they're thinking about. So when I clear the noise up front, it lets them get it off their chest so we can talk more openly about the real problem, the reason why we're here. So sometimes people will tell me, "Hey, I don't know if I'm gonna make payroll on Saturday." Well, that's a cash flow problem. And I'm like, okay, before we do anything else in the meeting, let's address the cash flow problem. The other thing that might happen is they might be a little vague, say, I don't know, something feels off, right? I can't really tell what type of problem that is if you say something feels off. So I'll go into the next technique, which is called the explorer. And the explorer is 2 different types of questions. One is a tell me more. Hey, tell me more. What do you think feels off? Which allows them to expand. Or the other way I'll say it is, "Hey, can you say that differently? What feels off?" And when you say it that way, when you ask somebody to restate what they told you, but say it differently, you'll get more detail from them. But can you see what I'm doing there? I'm getting them to say it. I'm not really guiding them except for to answer the question about the problem that we're talking about.
You are asking the right questions in there.
Yeah, yeah. And really it's about them saying it because if we can come, hey, it sounds like we have a cash flow problem, right? So I've got this technique called mining your business for hidden cash. Do you think we should try it? Do you see? I didn't go to let's go do this thing, mining your business for hidden cash, because we'll find the problem there. I said, I have this technique. Do you think we should try it? Almost 99.9% of the time, they're gonna say, "Yeah, let's go try it," right? Because it's their idea, and I gave them what you said, autonomy. They get to make the choices, but I'm guiding them to the right choice.
That's true. That's really, really, and it's basically, I still have that power and control, but then that's a guided control. It's with guidance and the right information. So that's really, really cool, Mike. So before we wrap up, if our listeners would like to get a hand on your book and also would love to connect with you, what will be the best way to do that?
Any of my books are on Amazon, so I've got all 3 books on Amazon that you can get right now. Just look for Mike Milan or Cashflow Mike. And if you go to my website, cashflowmike.com, cashflowmike.com, underneath the header, right, where it's got the headline, there is a, "Hey, stop, get this." It's a free lesson. You get a video course, you get a electronic version of my, 7-minute conversation book and the spreadsheet that goes with it to help you do the calculations, but you will learn the 6 calculations that I use called the home run financial system, which are 6 calculations that touch all the bases, right? That's where the home run comes in, but it touches a little bit from the income statement, a little bit from the balance sheet, and a little bit from the cash flow statement. And you'll learn more about your business today. If you go download it today, you'll learn more about your business today than any other time that you've been running your business. So I really encourage you, go get the free course, check it out, and learn more about your business.
Brilliant. I'll make sure to have all the links in the show notes. And Mike, this was not, you know, a more than a money talk. It was a mindset reset. It was a mindset conversation. So thank you so much for sharing your journey and also for kind of, guiding us on how to stop letting fear drive the wheel. So thank you. This was really
Yeah. Hey, I really appreciate you because money is emotional, right? It could be positive, it could be negative, but there's always an emotion behind it, not just a number.
hard just to remember. Wow. That's well summarized, Mike. And to all the listeners out there, if you have ever lost sleep over cash flow or felt paralyzed, overpowered, staring at a spreadsheet, remember that clarity is power and money is not only numbers, there is an emotion. So connect with Mike, get a hand on his books and the free resources. Just refer to the show notes along with this episode. And until next time, keep blending your strategy with sanity right here on BizBlend. Thank you.